All right, guys, welcome back to the channel here at Live Life in Maine. I get this question asked a lot, so I'm going to pose it here. I'm going to do a video on it. It's about what is the cost to live in Maine? What does it cost you? When people ask me that question, I say it really much depends on where you want to live. If you want to live along the coast, including around the Portland market, then you're going to pay a lot more than if you want to live inland or further north. So what I did was I took the state and I broke it down into two sections. I broke it down to kind of coastal urban living. That's kind of the Portland market. And then I broke it into rural living, which is more west and north of the coast. And the prices are pretty different. So I actually used three categories to do this. I said, what does it cost to live here if you're just a single person? What does it cost to live here if you're married and you have no kids, double income, no kids? And what does it cost to live here if you have kids? And I said like a family of 4 or 5. And then I broke that down by healthcare, housing costs, transportation, and kind of your basic necessities like groceries, heating costs, stuff like that. So if you want to know what it takes to, what do you know it costs to live in Maine, then I'd encourage you to grab some popcorn, grab a cup of water, grab a pen and paper, your favorite beverage if it's not water, because we're going to get after it right now. All right, guys, welcome back to the channel here at Live Life Maine. My name is Scott Tebow. I'm a broker realtor with eXp Realty. I'm a consultant. I'm a business owner. I flip properties. I buy properties. I'm an investor. I'm kind of everything real estate. Been doing it since really 1998, and I've been licensed as a realtor since 2013. My family and I, we live here in Biddeford. I'm married, got 5 kids. 2 grandchildren, 1 on the way, and I'm a veteran of the United States Navy, serving this country from 86 to 94. I'm also a son of Maine. I was born and raised here in Maine, grew up in Saco, graduated from Thornton Academy in 1986, went off to see the world, joined the military, the Navy, was gone for about 10 years. Most of that time was in the military. Came back in 1996. How old was I? 26, 27 years old, something like that. And I've been back ever since. I'm in my soon to be 57 here in a couple weeks. And I just love living here in Maine. And I like talking about Maine. Maine is not a secret anymore. With the advent of social media and the internet, people are discovering Maine. And there's a lot of reasons why people are moving here. I would say the biggest reason people are moving here is quality of life and safety. Maine ranks very high in those two categories. Specifically safety, where it's always in the top 1, 2, or 3. It's either Maine, New Hampshire, or Vermont. And then quality of life, you just can't beat it. I have been all around this country and in other parts of the world, and here I am living in Maine. So as I said in my monologue, we're going to talk about what it costs to live in Maine. I got some cheat sheets right here, so if you see me looking down, that's why. I'm going to try to keep this short and not rant too much, so here we go. If you want to live in Maine and you want to live in urban Maine, kind of along the coast, kind of along Portland area, and you're a single person, you need to make somewhere between $65,000 to $75,000 a year. And I'm going to break down why you need to make about that much a year. If you want to live in rural Maine and you're a single person, when I say rural, at least 20 to 25, maybe 30 miles away from the coast. So if you're looking at Maine, check the I-95 corridor and the 295 corridor. You want to be west and north of that. So when I say west of that, if you're looking at York County or Cumberland counties, the first 2 counties that you come into in Maine, kind of southern Maine, you want to be kind of west of 95, maybe 10 miles away from 95, about 20 miles in general away from the coast, although 95 is not 10 miles away from the coast. And then you want to be kind of either north or more west, right? So you want to start looking in the mid-coast region. I'm going to say up around Lewiston, Auburn, Augusta, and further up Bangor. And then if you really, really, really want to be remote, you really want to live in the country, then you can go up into what we call the county. That's Aroostook County. That's the largest county. Actually, east of the Mississippi, it's the largest county in Maine. We call it the county. That's where the potato farmers are. That's where the logging industry is and the lumber industry. But that's way up north, which is pretty far up there. But if you want to live in rural Maine, you need to make between $38,000 and $45,000 a year to kind of live comfortably. And what I did was I based these numbers on like rent or mortgage, as an example, being 30% of your income or 30% of your gross income, right? Obviously, you got taxes and stuff like that. So let's break it down. If you're a couple, you have no children. I just said if you were single, you had no children, it was between 65 and 75 in the Portland or urban areas, and it's between 38 and 45 if you're in rural Maine, thousand a year. If you're a couple, if you're a dink, if you're a double income, no kids, and you want to live in the Portland market or along that coast, right? Like I just said, coming into the state of Maine, you need to make between $90,000 and $110,000 a year to live in that section, in this section of Maine, where I live, and those numbers are true because it's kind of expensive to live here. I'm not going to deny the housing costs are pretty high. But if you want to live in the rural areas of Maine, it's between $77,000 and $88,000, give or take a couple thousand either way. Depends on how nice of an apartment or a house you buy. So that's a single adult, couple, and then a family. Let's say a family of four. If you want to live in the Portland market, if you're going to rent or if you're going to buy, you're going to need probably 3 bedrooms, maybe 4 bedrooms. You're going to need at least a bath and a half, probably 2 baths. But if you're a family of 4 and you want to live in the urban part of Maine, right, along that coast, including what I base is the Portland market, you need to make some dough. You need to make between $160,000 and $175,000 a year to live in this section of Maine. And if you want to live in rural Maine, you got to make some dough too, but it's not nearly as much. You're going to make between $80,000 and $105,000. So that's a family of 4. It's not unreasonable for a family of 4 in either of those numbers. If you're a professional, you and your wife, or you and your spouse, or you and your husband, you and your partner, probably are going to make somewhere around those numbers. If you're more blue collar or you're in a different trade than white collar, you're probably going to make $50,000 to $60,000 to $70,000 a year. So you add that times 2, you're doubling your income, you're doubling your money. You should be able to make about $120,000 to $130,000 a year as a family of 4. So let's talk about housing costs in general. Renting, I'm going to go down the renting road first. So in the Portland market along the coast, if you're not just Portland, but along the coast, median rent for a 2-bedroom apartment can range anywhere from $2,400 on the low side to $2,800, kind of in the middle. And then if you want to live in the kind of rural part of the state, you're going to pay somewhere between $900 and $1,350 for a, call it a studio, 1 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath. Those are kind of your costs. They go up from there. I kind of just did the basic bare minimum. Portland market's very expensive, and actually where I'm starting to live is very expensive too. Interestingly enough, I said I wasn't going to rent, but I'm going to rent right now. One of the mills that I helped develop, they're just trying to convert it all into condos in the city that I live in. The city of Biddeford just came out with an emergency moratorium saying no condos because they're worried it's going to price everybody out of the market and people aren't going to have a place to live. And then moving forward, home ownership costs. So buying a home in Maine. In general, the average cost across the state of Maine is right around that $400,000 number. Now, obviously, if you're way up north, that number's lower. And if you're along the coast in Portland, Maine, that number's a lot higher. So they blend it in to give you kind of a medium average cost of a home in Maine is $400,000. But to break it down even further, if you're going to live in the Portland market or around the Portland market, if you're going to live in Scarborough, kind of along the coast, right, from kind of I-95 towards the coast, which is like 2 or 3 miles, depends on what part of 95 you're on until you get to Lewiston, Auburn. You're going to pay some dough. You're going to pay between $550,000 and $750,000 for a house. And I'm not talking a McMansion, I'm talking a typical colonial, right? 2.5, 3 bedrooms, 2.5, 3 baths, maybe finished above the garage and a basement, 2-car garage, typical colonial house or a Cape house. Ranches will probably be a little bit less. And then obviously you have Victorians and stuff like that will be a little bit more. And if you want to live away from the coast, away from the Portland market, that same thing. Inland, 20 miles, let's say, or further north, or west, you're going to pay between $3.50 and $4.25. Obviously, the further north you get, like I'm talking, you get up above Waterville, you start getting into the Bangor market and even further north. $4.25 is going to buy you a lot up there as long as you're away from the coast. Some of the other expenses that you need to consider. Groceries in Maine are kind of slightly higher than the national average due to the rural nature of transportation costs coming in and out of the state. A lot of people think that Maine, it's the end of the road, right? It kind of is, if you will, if you're not going to go into Canada. It's the end of the road for the United States. We are the most eastern state in the country. So a single person's going to spend between $350 and $400 a month in groceries. And that only goes up if you got a family, right? My wife said she needed a budget of $4,000 a month, and I told her she was crazy. So I started tracking how much she spends on groceries every month. She doesn't spend $4,000. I think she just wanted a pretty big buffer. She spends about $22,000, though, $2,200 a month on groceries. So you're going to need, if you're a big family like we are, or, you're a family of four, you're going to spend somewhere between $1,500, $1,700, $1,900, $2,100 a month on groceries. And it doesn't help in this inflated market, right? Everything's more expensive. Healthcare costs is also expensive. We compare with the national average, and Maine is a pretty big healthcare state in terms of employment. It's the second or third largest employee or industry in the Maine that employs. It's a pretty big healthcare market. But for a single person, monthly premiums are going to cost somewhere between $400 and $600. You might be able to get on the marketplace a little bit lower. And a family is going to spend between $1,200 and $1,500 a month on premiums. That doesn't count your deductible or your co-pays or anything like that. We do have quite a few health insurance options here in Maine. We have Anthem, we have Harvard, we have Maine Community. There's a few others. I go through a broker that kind of lines them all up for me, and he reviews our policies every year to see which one makes sense. And then transportation costs. A lot of people don't take this into account, especially those who are moving from bigger cities. You need a car to live in Maine. You really do. You can't get there from here without a car. Yes, we have public transportation in more of the municipalities, but in these towns and stuff, there's no public transportation. So you're going to need a vehicle. And vehicle costs, obviously, with a car payment, if you can buy a decent vehicle, that's going to, you want a front row drive vehicle, ideally, or an all-wheel drive vehicle, or a 4x4, or a truck that has four-wheel drive, obviously, because of the winter. But you're going to spend anywhere from, I'm going to say, if you don't have a car payment, you're going to spend a couple $100 a month putting in gas and insurance. So you're going to spend about $300. If you have a car payment, add that onto it. Oil, gas, your car payment, insurance, depending on if you're going to have snow tires and you're going to change them out, or you're going to use all seasons. You're going to spend between, single person is going to spend between $400 and $600 a month on transportation costs. And a family, obviously, depending on if you're transporting your kids all around the sports and stuff. I have buddies, that's all they do all weekend. They have no life, right? Their kids are younger. So when I say buddies, they're younger than me, but I still kind of hang around the hip crowd. You're going to spend maybe up to a couple grand on transportation costs if you need more than one or two vehicles and the type of vehicles you need. Maine is actually pretty strict, too, in terms of vehicles. That you do have to get them registered every year. More importantly, you got to get them inspected every year. And in Maine, the big problem we have up here is they salt the roads quite a bit because of the winter. So if you don't have the underbody of your car or truck covered, putting a coating on it to prevent the salt and stuff, it's going to eat away at your vehicle. I have a few vehicles, but I have a 2011 F-150 EcoBoost. I bought it brand new. It's been paid for a few years. It's a truck. I love it. But I just had to have my rocker panels replaced, and I wasn't going to spend $80,000 for a new truck. This truck runs great. It's got 160,000 miles. It's kind of a truck that I, clean out houses with, or I help people move, or I move stuff. You can't live without a truck in Maine, in my opinion. But those rocker panels to replace both sides was about $8,000. I know some people can do it cheaper, but it's not cheap. So you're going to need a car, and you might need two. Depends if you're a family or not. So in conclusion, guys, for a single person living in the rural part of Maine, you're gonna need to, if you make 40 to 60 grand a year, you're gonna be fine. If you live down along the coast, if you live in the urban area, you're gonna need to make. I'm gonna just say, and these numbers I think are a little low. I think you're gonna need to at least make $75,000 a year, especially if you want to live in the Portland market, right? The average rent in Portland for a studio, I think, is like $2,000 a month. So that's kind of using a third of your gross income going towards rent. You're going to need about $75,000 a month. And then if you're a family of four, you're probably going to need about $175,000. I'm sorry, did I say $75,000 a month? $75,000 a year, excuse me. And then if you're a family of four, you're going to need about $175,000 a year if you want to live along the coast or in the Portland market to be comfortable. You're not going to be rich, but you may be able to go on vacation and everything once a year. And if you want to live kind of more in rural Maine, you need to make about 80 to 90K a year because housing costs are a lot less. Although transportation costs are probably going to be a little bit more. Think about this, guys. The lower the housing cost is in Maine, the more you're going to drive. So if you want to live up in the county, if you want to live way up there and you want to pay $210,000 for a house, you can get a nice house, but it's an hour to an hour and a half to the grocery store. Never mind if you have a healthcare issue or you got to go to the doctors. Or you might be able to find a local convenience store that's close, but you're going to travel. So depending on how rural you want to be. The last thing I'm going to say is a lot of people say, well, I'm worried about the internet. Maine is a pretty big state for remote workers. A lot of people have come here because they're not tethered to their jobs anymore and they can work remote. And people ask about internet. And I can tell you it's all been solved thanks to Elon Musk. Maine was one of the first states that did beta testing for Starlink in Maine. A few years ago. He's got many more satellites out there now. I actually have Starlink at my camp, and it's great. It screams. I can have like four smart TVs, computer, camera, my wife on her phone, my kids on their phone. I've had no internet issues, streaming music, streaming video, whatever, with Starlink. So the old adage of satellite wasn't any good. It's really good now. It's that low orbit satellite. So they've kind of figured that issue out. So you can really live anywhere in Maine and get pretty good internet. When I say pretty good, I think my internet connection is like 350 megs down and maybe 100 megs up. So I'm just pointing at the northern sky with my dish, and it's pretty easy to set up. So guys, that's it. I hope this information was helpful for you. If you want to know more about different specific areas and the cost of living in those specific areas, other than just housing costs, drop me a line, send me a text, give me an email. I'm glad to reach out to you, and stay safe. We'll talk to you soon. Scott Tebow over and out. Bye-bye.